Welcome to Win Wednesdays. We're back with another exciting session featuring guest speaker Julie Anixter. This is part of the Women in Industry initiative sponsored by the Roland School of Business at Point Park University. There are several components to this initiative. If you're interested in learning more, please visit us online at acceleratingwin.org. You can learn more about the Accelerating Win event that we host in conjunction with International Women's Day. We also have, when pandemics aren't impacting it, a campus speaker series. We have added Win Wednesdays, our virtual speaker series. And we also have some opportunities that you can support Win by going to our website and learning more there. And we're really focused on educating and empowering, on accelerating the success of women-owned students, women-identified students and professionals. We do have a session on women-owned businesses coming up in a few weeks. We're also looking at engaging leaders, affecting conversations, and encouraging allyship through elevating experiences. I'm Doreen Saletti, and I'm an assistant professor of marketing and sales at Point Park University. I'm joined today by my colleague, Sandy Mervash, who is also a professor and a program director of human resources here at the Roland School of Business at Point Park University, and she is program director of our Women in Industry initiative. So I'm going to turn it over to Sandy to get our program started today.
Thank you, Doreen. I am really pleased to introduce to you our speaker today, Julie Anixter. Thank you very much for joining us. Julie considers herself to be very privileged to work at the enterprise level in both the military, federal government, and business, representing a cohort of designers and innovators who help leaders move from intent to impact. At Throughline, formerly Magna Design, she consults on enterprise design strategy and makes it visible through visualization. She specializes in large-scale transformation projects and new product, service, and business model implementations. Julie has global experience working with world-class brands and institutions utilizing design thinking, experience design, business strategy, and technology to activate and realize transformation and growth with an emphasis on helping empower stakeholders to create impact. Her commercial consulting clients have included Aetna, Bayer, Chanel, GE, P&G, Roche, Verizon, and Xerox. In the federal sector, she has worked with U.S. Naval Aviation Systems Command, the U.S. Air Force IT Command, and the USPS. She most recently served as Executive Director, AIGA, the Professional Association for Design. Prior roles included CMO, Brand Imaging, Managing Director, Tom Peters Company, and principal in her own consulting company, Think Remarkable. She has also served in executive leadership roles in 2 Fortune 500 companies. Julie's career has been very focused on imaging and creative remarkable results through embedding imagination and creativity in large and small organizations. At Point Park University, we have been very privileged to work closely with her in initiatives through the Postal Service. And we are just really welcome you here today to share your knowledge with us. And please, Julie, take it from here.
Got it. Thank you so much. It is really a pleasure to be here and to be able to talk with the people on the line and then who will listen later on a subject that is very important to me, which is our own ability to design a meaningful work life. And I'll just start with the first slide, which is my belief that you can design anything. You can design the enterprise, you can design your work, you can design your career, you can design the next dinner you're going to cook, you can design the way to change careers. Design is a powerful form of agency. Listed on this slide are the kinds of design disciplines that we practice at Throughline. You know, there are many others. We don't have architecture on here, we don't have industrial design, we don't do those, but we do blend these different forms of design, as Sandra said, to help leaders and people at all levels move from their intention and their idea to the result. So let me just show you a little bit of the kind of work we do. Many years ago, and I have lots of role models, and I'll encourage all of you to add as many role models to your life as you can. I met a wonderful man named Klaus Melander, who was doing work mats, large visualizations that he brought into organizations to help them grow and change. I met him at Ford. I asked him if I could start making maps. He said, if I use the technique, he said, go for it. And so I did. This is a long time ago. And I brought this map making, this visualization technique to Scott Williams, who was my client at the Naval Aviation Systems Command 15, 20 years ago. And we've been working together ever since. This is a map that we created for National Geographic. And if that's not bringing coals to Newcastle, I don't know what is, but they wanted to visualize their missions program, because every year they select some number of explorers who they fund to go out into the world and explore. But the process wasn't clear. So we sat and worked with the leaders of that program over a couple of weeks. And Rebecca Williams, who's our Chief Creative Officer, created this map for National Geographic. So that's sort of where we started, was visualizing strategy on maps. And then on the next slide, you'll see we've expanded. This is one of our terrific partners right now, WAPA, which is a life insurance company that serves the federal civilian population. They came to us because they were embarking on a whole new digital transformation, and they wanted to be able to explain it succinctly to their board. So we spent time, and you can see the graphic recording on the wall and the concepts and some of the work we did in real time. And from that work, we created this map, which explained the digital transformation that the CIO and the CMO wanted to do together. And they took it to their board and successfully, got the money to do it. And they're now a year in, and it's happening. So that's another example of working with visualization, but then we've stayed with them to help visualize the website and a lot of the aspects of the transformation. The military is the US military is a great leadership institution. My dad was in the Army. It's always a privilege to work with anybody in the military. We have the greatest respect for them. And as Sandy said, I've done a lot of work with the Navy and the Air Force. This was a project that we did for a group in the Navy who wanted to be able to visualize data, to see data in real time versus having to, sort of compare spreadsheets between their people and suppliers. So really brilliant captain that we worked with at the time said, create a room that feels like a dinner party, where we can all see the data on a screen, and give us new ways to work with it. And we called it Log Cell, and that was a really thrilling experience. And you can sort of see me, I'm in the middle photograph up against the wall in a room of lots of incredible people. And it's wonderful to be able to help companies work in new ways. So visualization always helps. And then the last example of the kind of work that we're doing, and Doreen and Steve Tanzilli and Patrick and Sandra are very familiar with this. We have helped the US Postal Service build a brand over the last 2 years called Direct Effect, which is a curriculum and certification for universities to teach the next generation of business people and marketers how to use direct mail in the integrated marketing mix. And so we help companies launch services, new business models, and we'll hear more about that. So I said earlier that I think you can design your career, but I will tell you, I think career as a word is overrated. I have friends that when we were in high school, they knew exactly what they wanted to do. That wasn't me. I was an artist in high school and college. I didn't have a good sense of what was possible. And so I sort of stumbled into some things, and this is a list of the different titles that I've had over the course of my career. I will tell you at this point in my career, please keep going. We'll stay a little while on this slide. I don't think titles are that important. I think it's the work that's important. And the work to me is very meaningful. There's some people who maybe would prefer to be retired and go fishing, although I would think fishing would be work. But I love to work with people. I love to solve problems. And what I want to share with you today, I really want to encourage everyone who listens to this talk to claim your own power to find and shape opportunities. And then when those opportunities happen, when they come along and you seize them, you're going to feel some uncertainty. You might even be afraid. I mean, we're living in a scary time with the pandemic. The economy's been in a free fall. I know for a lot of people graduating from school, it's, you know, it's very confusing and scary and weird, but I'm here to tell you that you can deal with fear and uncertainty by design and create momentum and meaning. And I'm going to show you how I've done it. You'll do it differently, but if I tell you how I've done it, maybe I can kind of unlock this process for you, because I think it's a lot simpler than maybe it seems. So I say start by figuring out something you love. This is a Navajo rug. My mother was from New Mexico. I grew up outside of Chicago in a house and sort of just a middle-class family with a few old Navajo rugs on the floor and some black pottery. What I didn't realize until I got much older, into my 20s, and I was going to art school, was that those Navajo rugs kind of went into my brain and fed my soul and connected something very deep and profound for me that I couldn't articulate at the time. But I knew I loved the bold visual design. This one is called an eye dazzler. Go to the next. And, you know, I believe that parents have the biggest impact on how well their kids, you know, sort of embrace learning and curiosity. And as I said, my mother was from Albuquerque, New Mexico, where we traveled back and forth from Chicago every year and got to go. She took us to Hopi and Zuni pueblos, and we saw the dances, and it was such a different world than Chicago. I think I was mesmerized by it. And she also loved music, and that's Ella Fitzgerald. There was always great music, Frank Sinatra playing in the background. And the music and the art and the passion for those things in our household shaped me. So what I have realized, if we go to the next, is, as Shakespeare said, to thine own self be true. I know what I love. Doreen knows what I love too, because we've done a lot of this together. I love working with talented people. The people at Point Park are amazing. They're all multifaceted. They've all had other careers. They really understand the bridge from school to work. They're leaders in it. I gravitate to entrepreneurs, to leaders, to masters, to innovators, to artists, to places where there's great heritage. I also gravitate to struggle and advocacy. There's a lot that needs fixing in the world, to citizenship, to deep work, to soulful work, to elegance, exquisiteness, talented people. That's what motivates me.
Go to the next, all of you to start with what you love and allow it to be your end.
Wireless might be acting up. Can you hear me, Doreen? Yes? Okay. Be your own antenna. Listen for the signals. When I met Dean Tanzilli and learned that he had been a sports agent and was a lawyer, you know, we just connected. And I found the way that he and Doreen and others have built Point Park in downtown Pittsburgh, built the theater. They took us on a tour. We saw, you know, the plays being worked on. We saw the costume studio. I was blown away. I wanted to stay and go to school. I knew that I wanted to work with these people because they were resonating with me on a pretty deep level. I knew that we had a lot of shared values, and as you'll see, we've done a lot together. So be your own antenna, let the signals come in, and then pick the ones that appeal to you. I was going to say that turn you on, that stoke your curiosity. Unlike my friend Debbie, who knew she wanted to be a filmmaker from a very early age, I just knew I wanted to work with interesting people. And honestly, in my 20s, that's all that guided me. It was, where is it going to be the most interesting? And that's what took me on my path. But I've stayed, it's worked for me. And so this is my MO. And it's not that I don't plan and analyze and think about where the best opportunities are, but what I think I'm especially good at, which I really want to share with you, is I'm good at sensing, smelling, seizing those opportunities and being ready for them when they happen. So if we go to the next slide, I lived in Lexington, Kentucky with my husband, or actually in Georgetown, Kentucky. And let's just stay right there for a second, for 10 years. And my husband loves barbecue. And when I was in Lexington, I would go to Red State Barbecue and pick up barbecue for him. And one day I was there and my phone rang, and it was late in the day and I was tired. I was working for the Tom Peters Company at the time. And I just had, and I'm sure you know exactly how this feels. I had this sort of like, oh no, I don't want to talk to anybody. But I answered. And at first, I was sort of paying attention to the barbecue and paying attention to the call and kind of split. And I thought this person was trying to sell me something. But my mother trained me well to be polite and to listen. So I kept listening. And I realized that he was trying to hire me. He was trying to hire me to help him create and facilitate a sprint for France Telecom. He had found out about me somehow, I don't even know. And so we did that work and it was really fun and we really connected. And then he said to me, and let's go to the next slide. Gee, I have a friend who's head of HR at Ian Schrager Hotels. And that's Ian Schrager in the bottom. And for those of you who don't know who he is really the progenitor, the prime innovator of the boutique hotel. Over about 30 years ago, he ran Studio 54 with Steve Rubell, big disco in New York City. And then he transitioned into hotels and he created a hotel called Morgan's. He worked with a French designer named Andre Putnam. I'd been reading about it. I went at one point in my career, I was blown away. It was a completely different experience. It was a completely different experience. So Ed said to me, my friend is head of HR for Ian Schrager. They want to do something. I think they'd like you. I said, okay. We went and met with them in New York City. She said, Ian wants to run the hotel like it's improv. This was just after 9/11 and revenues were down, people weren't going. This hotels had a reputation for being very snobby. And long story short, they hired me to help them build a program, which we called The Edge, creating an engaging, delightful guest experience, which lasted at Ian Schrager Hotels. Then it became Morgan's. He sold it for over 10 years. And it was a very profound experience. I got to work with employee leadership teams in 12 hotels. It was a very simple, elegant program. It was all based on values. Two of Ian's top values were authentic and original. It wasn't like, how may I help you, ladies and gentlemen? It was like, hey, come on in. It was very different. But what I want you to know is that from that experience of working with Ian Schrager Hotels, I got to then go and work at Chanel and develop a training for the North American boutique managers. Then I had to go to do something very similar for China Grill. Then the people who had been at Morgan's went to the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas, and I had 4 of the most profound, great career experiences of my life. But why? Because I took that call at the barbecue place and I listened. That's what I mean by seizing opportunities. Coco Chanel was a leader in her own right. She said luxury is a spiritual need. And so what we did in the next slide is we helped the boutique managers figure out how they could make the service as luxurious as the product. It was really a beautiful experience. I even got a pair of shoes. So how do you do this? You may not be buying barbecue. You may not know somebody who knows somebody who's going to get you into a hotel chain and then get you to Chanel, but we all exist in networks. And if you don't know the term network effect, start to think about it. Through Doreen and Steve, I have now developed a whole network in Pittsburgh, and they have developed a whole network in the Postal Service and with R.R. Donnelley. And that's the way it works. When you do good work, lots of connections happen. So honor those connections, honor the relationships, treat everybody with care, and stay open to those opportunities because they will fly by and you can grab them, but you have to be paying attention. When you get that kind of opportunity, it's scary, okay? I mean, who was I to go into Ian Schrager and help develop a training course? I'd been developing training for corporations, but they were much different. They were industrial distribution companies. But I trusted my instincts. Now, here's the thing I've learned about fear and emotions of all kinds, and I learned this from Dr. Fernando Flores. We're physical, we have nervous systems. Emotions are like weather. They just blow through. You could be having a great day and then suddenly you're having an anxiety attack. You don't even know why. What I've learned is that if you pay attention to what's going on in your nervous system, in your own body, in your own mind, in your own moods, and observe what's going on and observe the pulse, observe your own state, you can design it. You can divide fear, anxiety, stress, and we all have a lot of it. Let's face it, that's life. You can divide it, conquer it with mindfulness. I really, really believe this. And I'm going to show you some examples of people who have done this. I myself am terrified of heights. And before I became the executive director of AIGA, I climbed the largest bridge in Sydney, Australia, which took 3 hours. They strap you in with a jumpsuit, a piton, and a headset. And I mean, I'm literally like, I hate heights. But I decided to see if meditation, and for you, it might not be meditation, it might be running, it might be singing, but there's a way to center yourself. And I decided to see if it could work. And I breathed and I meditated and I hummed my entire way through that 3-hour bridge climb. And I did it. And I basically walked through my fear. You have to take your fear with you. Don't try and get rid of it. Let it empower you. Let that anxiety, let that energy empower you. Let me show you some examples of people who are masters at this. My husband went to UCLA, which means I watch every UCLA game known to man and woman. And in 2019, for the second year in a row, the UCLA women's softball team went to the finals. And this is the pitcher, Rachel Garcia, who pitched a no-hitter against, I think it was Oklahoma, I can't be sure, but it was an enormous, giant team of women. And she's kind of slight, but this woman had such presence on that mound, pitch after pitch, after pitch, after pitch, in the first game, a no-hitter. It was 0-0 in the bottom of the ninth. She came up to bat and hit a 3-run homer. It was the most moving thing I have ever seen because of this woman's level of self-possession. And afterwards she cried and she said she had done it for her grandfather who had recently died. But if you ever get a chance to see her, and all great athletes, Scottie Pippen, Michael Jordan, the pitcher on the White Sox that we've been watching, every great athlete has this ability to go into the zone. They take their fear, they take their anxiety, and they use it and they focus. So she's a role model for practicing that. Let's go to the next. Antoinette Carroll is a friend of mine, an amazing leader in the space of equity-based design and social design. You know, you can design anything. She's a resident of Ferguson, Missouri. If you remember, I think it was 7 or 8 years ago, a young man named Michael Brown was shot and killed in Ferguson, and it was kind of it erupted into riots. It was a terrible moment for St. Louis, for the country. Antoinette lived there, she was a designer, and she said, I gotta make a difference here. So she started working with the youth in the community and the mayor's office, and she built a company called Creative Reaction Lab to help communities use design thinking to address issues of equity and social justice. She has gone on to become a TED speaker, a TED fellow, and I put plus, 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 because this woman has received so many awards and grants because she's so singular in her focus. And she used a horrific, violent experience in her community and transformed it with purpose. And I have the greatest admiration and respect for her. She's a role model for purpose. In your own city, you have a wonderful woman who was recently just stepped down from being the head of design for Carnegie Mellon. Her name is Terry Irwin. She now leads the service design practice. She's an AIGA medalist. Terry is my role model for ambition. Terry wants to use design to deal with big honking problems. She calls it transition design. And if you go to the next slide, Doreen, you know, these people, each one of them brings new knowledge, new experiences, new energy, new practices to the world when they show up. Terry has dealt with droughts and issues of environmental distress and all kinds of things. She's a leader in this transition design movement, and she's worked with the Winter House Institute and created this model with some other folks there, Lee Davis from MICA and some other folks. And I love it because when we think about design, this simple drawing framework shows
project. You can be a team working on a project.
at the cultural level. Can you still hear me, Doreen? Still good?
We lost you momentarily, but you came back.
Okay, good. This wonderful chart, and you're all going to have a copy of this this recording, and you can find it at the Winter House Institute, shows the different levels of design practice that are going on in the world today. And Terry is a leader in cross-sector design at the cultural level. And she uses design to address very, wicked problems. That's another way to deal with fear and anxiety, is to say, hey, I can design something better. As we move into election season, I can't not talk about the vote. This is my friend Liz Keener, who's head of digital transformation for Sloan Kettering right now. She was a design principal at IBM until about 6 months ago. But Liz does not want to stay on the sidelines. This is a piece that we did for No Nonsense. So she wrote a graphic novel, worked with 2 other designers to explain what the suffragettes did to young girls. Liz is my role model for using your voice. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see Liz has created a site called She Votes 100. This is Liz with her daughter. And on the right, in the lower right corner, my right, is her Kickstarter, successful Kickstarter campaign. She said, I want to leave a better story about the suffragettes for the next generation of women. So she wrote a graphic novel. All of these are examples of people using design, creativity, agency, passion, the work they care about most to deal with the toughest things in the world. And you can too. So once you've seized opportunities and you've gotten engaged by Ian Schrager or your Kickstarter campaign, how do you create momentum and meaning for yourself? Okay, I wish I had learned this in my 20s. Yeah, keep going. I wish that I had learned that I didn't have to wait for anybody to give me permission to create momentum. And as Doreen knows, I certainly don't wait these days. I want to tell you the 2 places that I'm focused and how I'm creating momentum and meaning in the world for myself and hopefully for a lot of other people, with teams of people. I'm not doing it by myself. I'm focused on Pennsylvania and I'm focused on Chicago. I'm from Chicago. It's a city that I love. It's a city that has a lot of issues. I'm going to tell you about a few of them in a moment. And if you could fall in love with the state, I have. And I've fallen in love with the state of Pennsylvania and everything it represents, but particularly the spirit of the people. And there's some ways that we are working together with Doreen and Steve and Patrick that I want to tell you about and invite you to be part of. But let me tell you first about Chicago. On the south side of Chicago, in the lower left, you see Vernon Lockhart. Vernon is a designer. He calls himself a creative therapist, and he has a business called Art on the Loose. For the last 20 years, Vernon has been teaching design thinking through a nonprofit he started called Project Osmosis to high school kids on the south side of Chicago. And if you know anything about the south side of Chicago, you know it is a place that is rife with economic injustice, murders. Murder rate has been crazy, a lot of police issues. It is a troubled place. But I promise you it is less troubled because of Vernon and the amazing people that are at Project Osmosis. So what you see on the right is Jerick Howard, who's one of the young men that Vernon's worked with. And there's an amazing video where Vernon talks about the way that he's using design thinking with young men on the south side of Chicago on their site, which I encourage all of you to look at. Vernon has a dream. He wants to build a design center on the south side of Chicago. You can see the drawings for it. And their mantra is dreams, self-expression, community. And he intends to raise $25 million, and I intend to help him. And I really want to see this design center built, because I know, much like the work that's going on at Point Park, if we could put it in the water system, if we can get more design thinking, more entrepreneurship, more self-expression, more creativity in the water system of the South Side, that community will be better served. On the next slide, you see Jerick's brand that he built. His brand is Humbly Arrogant, and he just graduated from high school. His mission statement is having grace and power all at once. By being humbly arrogant, you embrace the idea of being powerful yet graceful in every move you make. Everything is skillfully thought out and planned, then executed as efficiently as possible. Humbly Arrogant is more than a brand, it's a way of life that promotes not only Black excellence, but self-confidence and self-worth in the Black community and to people as a whole. It's a high school senior. This is the impact of teaching design thinking to high school students. This is what our country needs. We have so many problems that could be made better. I won't say solved, but made much, much better if we unleashed people's capacity to create, to make money, to express themselves, and to have agency. And that's why I am so committed to Project Osmosis and to design. And it's an opportunity that came to me, keep moving, through AIGA, which I will always be grateful to AIGA Chicago for introducing me to Vernon. I'm joining the board of Project Osmosis, and I'm profoundly committed, and I intend to create a lot of momentum for them. Okay, last story, and then we'll take some questions. This is my friend Joe Boylan. 2 years ago, he called me. I didn't know him. I was introduced by a mutual friend. He said, would you come up to Wilkes-Barre and speak to our group one evening in September? And I love to speak, as you can probably tell. And I said, sure. So I went up and I spoke, and I had a great connection. He ran the Think Center in Wilkes-Barre Connect in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, as part of the Chamber of Commerce. And we just formed a great bond. So 6 months later, when one of the people on my team said, I think for the US Postal Service and Direct Effect, we should do hackathons. And Vicki Stephen, our wonderful client and dear friend, said, great idea, but if we're gonna do it, let's do it in time for the National Postal Forum, where 5,000 people are gonna show up. That means we have to do it by mid-April. Well, it was February. Now, as Doreen and Steve know, because they hosted one of these hackathon competitions at Point Park, there's a lot of work that goes into it. And I thought, oh my God, we need to do this. It's a great opportunity to launch it, but what am I gonna do? And Joe's face flashed in my head. And I called him and I said, Joe, do you think you could help us get some schools? There are lots of schools in Wilkes-Barre. He said, no problem. 3 weeks later, we had 10 schools at the Think Center. But wait, the story gets better. So we had a fantastic pilot. A couple of those young people went to the National Postal Forum, pitched all kinds of great ideas to postal leaders, had a life-changing experience. It was great, great outcomes. And then in June, I was in my car and Joe calls, and I always answer his calls. And he said, are you sitting down? I said, well, I'm driving. Well, I just got a call from my friend, Cassandra Coleman. The governor wants to launch America 250 PA, which is the celebration of the America's 250th birthday in 2026. And of course, Pennsylvania is going first because it was first. That's where the Declaration of Independence was signed. He said, Cassandra needs a way to launch this for Governor Wolf. So I said to her, well, the Postal Service has this great hackathon. And when you get a call like that, you know that this is an opportunity of a lifetime. So I said, well, we have to figure it out. They want to launch it mid-August. This was mid-June. Go to the next. So we went from a basement in Wilkes-Barre to launching, and you can keep going down to the signing, to launching. There's Governor Wolf and Cassandra Coleman and Pat, I'm blanking on his last name, the other commissioner. And these are all the commissioners of the America 250 PA Commission. And there's Governor Wolf signing it into being. And let's go to the next. And here we are in mid-August, a year ago, in his residence. Sorry about that. Let's see. But anyway, we went to his residence. He invited all 160 presidents of universities in Pennsylvania to join us, and we launched the America 250 competition. So let's go to the next. Let's see if I can figure this out. Bear with me for 1 second. So we have had the most amazing experience working with schools like Point Park and Wilkes University. I just have to get into it. Okay, there we go. You see one of the commissioners, Nicole White, you see a student, you see Governor Wolf. It just unfolded into this amazing experience where 32 schools pitched integrated marketing campaign ideas to launch the governor's program. Let's go to the next. It was an amazing, amazing coming together of education, industry, community, and the US Postal Service. When I called, I got a hold of Doreen. I'm not even sure how I found you, Doreen, but I called you, and first time we had a conversation, I said, I told you about this. And you said, yes, we should do this without even hesitating. And that's what I mean about seizing opportunities. And we've had such an incredible relationship with your school, because I think we all understand that these opportunities lead to bigger things. So let's go to the next. So these are the 8 schools that made it to the finals, and we'll go to the next. And when we get to Q&A, I really want to ask Doreen the question, how have you seen this change people's lives? Because I know that it has. And here you see all of the student teams, including Point Parks, that came to the finals. You see the Wilkes University team at the bottom, which came in first. It was a tight race with Point Park, but Wilkes came in first with a great campaign. And then if you go to the next slide, these are the results. So remember, from intent to impact, the Postal Service wants to engage the next generation of you all, of marketers, in understanding how direct mail fits into the marketing mix. And these are concrete results. They got 66 campaign concepts from schools in Pennsylvania. They loved it, the commission loved it, but what I think is even more important is I think 66 teams got to experience something that was real. And if we just scroll, Doreen, you're gonna see some of, here was one of the Celebrate Your PA Your Own Way. I believe this was King's University in Wilkes-Barre. Pennsylvania Proud was another great campaign. The next was the 5C plan, curiosity collection, competition, commemoration, communication, and they had budgets and they had 3 different channels. It was amazing. This is Millersburg. This is an elegant, beautiful campaign. You're invited. They used the Liberty Bell. This is our friends at Robert Morris, our great friends Eliada and Anthony. They had a timestamp, such a cool idea. And then next, not least but not last, is PA Part of Us. This was the gorgeous campaign that Bree Ferrand and the team, working with Doreen and others at Point Park, created. Go to the next. There's a little bit more you could see. And R.R. Donnelly actually produced these samples for them because we had R.R. Donnelly presidents in there as judges. It was, again, this coming together of all these different stakeholders. Go to the next. And here's the winning campaign from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania, first and foremost. Again, falling in love with your state. In addition to the Declaration of Independence, there are a lot of other firsts that have happened, and this campaign celebrates them. But again, for me, the most exciting and important part of this whole opportunity, and that's what it's been from start to now, is to see the effect, the transformative effect that participating in a real hackathon with real outcomes has had on young students, young people, young men and women. And this is the amazing team from Point Park. And when we get to Q&A, I'm going to ask Doreen to talk a little bit about what's happened to them. So the results of these partnerships, like, well, Julie, that's amazing. I think it's amazing. But it doesn't stop, because once you understand that this is generative, let me just say it simply. The world has so many needs. I mean, just look at our economy. People need to learn how to make money. They need to learn how to survive. Creating new stuff, new ways of working together, new partnerships is a real answer. So I want to show you 2 of the results of these great partnerships. The first is, and we are going to be working with Doreen and the team there on Drive PA. With R.R. Donnelly, our firm is going to launch a campaign to encourage Pennsylvanians to enjoy the state, enjoy your free national parks. You're one of the few states that has free national parks. To get out safely, to understand how to interact and stay safe with hand sanitizer and all the other things as you travel and stop at places to use the restrooms or go and get dinner. And how can you do that in a way where you and your family really feel good and it's going to open opportunities? That's what Drive PA is about. And you'll be seeing a lot more about it from us over the winter and the spring. And I invite all of you to get involved and be part of it. The last opportunity is the opportunity to be part of America 250 this year. And you have up until October 8th to get involved if you want to. And if you want to get involved as a student or as a faculty member, and we encourage all of you to do that because you can see what the results are. You can register at america250pa.org/innovation-challenge, or you can send us an email. And again, Doreen and I and Sandra will be talking about really what this experience was like. So my goal, and I know I speak fast, I act fast, I sometimes go too fast, but it's kind of my nature. my goal is really to encourage all of you to find your own way, to take the things you love, the things you're passionate about, and find and shape opportunities to do more of that. And then to use that passion to deal with the inevitable fear and uncertainty and anxiety that comes from doing anything new. I once wrote an essay about the dirty little secret of learning. Learning's painful. It's painful to be a beginner. But you know what? That's the only way you get to become competent, and then a virtuoso, and then a master. And when you find work that you love, that stimulates you, where you can work in teams and find partners, that kinds that I've described, you're going to create more momentum and meaning than you can even begin to realize. I'll tell you in closing, for me, working in Pennsylvania this last 2 years with all these great people and schools and the commission and the chamber, I have realized that I want to use design to drive economic development. That is what I'm up to right now in my life. That's what I care about. And that has all come out of seizing an opportunity to go speak. Joe seized an opportunity to apply what we did in a basement in Wilkes-Barre to the entire state. Doreen and Steve and Sandra and Patrick seized an opportunity to say, we'll jump in. And everybody along the way, I think, has benefited. So I hope you feel encouraged. It's been great being able to tell you these stories and share this with you. I have really enjoyed it. And with that, Doreen, I'm happy to take any questions if there are any, or chat about whatever. Thank you. And by the way, if you want to connect with me, LinkedIn is the best way to do it. And I'm happy to connect with anybody.
And we do have some questions, Julie. They are coming in.
Cool.
Thank you so much for sharing your stories and examples of, kind of designing this work life and designing your opportunities and being able to move forward. Now, one question that came up is you had talked a bit earlier about listening and understanding yourself and finding your passions. So a question that came in is, how do we become better listeners so that we can hear our inner voice, so that we can break through the external noise?
One of my mentors is an incredible man named Dr. Fernando Flores, who was the economics minister in Chile, and then he was a political prisoner, and then Amnesty International got him out, dropped him down at Stanford, and he invented groupware. And I got to study with him for a few years. One of the things he had us do was walk through some woods outside of San Francisco, Muir Woods, for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and listen to the trees. The best way to listen is to not speak. Practice just listening and not talking when you're in groups, when you're in your classes. You can certainly go deeper by coming up with your own practices for deepening listening. Meditation is a wonderful one, but so is going to an art gallery. So is running. Joyce Carol Oates is one of the most successful authors in the world, always runs or walks before she writes, because the ideas start flowing. Elizabeth Gilbert, who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, has an incredible book that I encourage, if you're really interested in listening and finding your passion, for you to read or to listen to. It's called I'll tell you in a second, but it's the one about creativity. And she says that ideas gallop. They like gallop across your life. And if you're not ready, you might miss them. So keep a journal, keep a place to write, use your computer. But I think the main thing, Doreen, is to respect that you are a creative, and that if you listen, you're going to discover things. Just like I've discovered that economic development is where I want to spend the next couple of years. And I'll tell you Elizabeth Gilbert's book before we leave.
Thank you. Yeah, it is interesting to think about taking that kind of break, meeting the moment and trying to understand what you need. With technology and the pace of life and just the level of uncertainty and fear right now, everyone can benefit from your advice and taking some time to listen to themselves and to find that outlet that helps them to be more authentically them. Thank you.
Tiffany Schlein, I highly recommend checking out her site. It's SHLAIN. And she talks a lot about, she's a beautiful crowdsourced filmmaking site. She's out in Berkeley. She talks about taking technology Sabbaths, like having one day every week where you just unplug completely. The Elizabeth Gilbert book is Big Magic. You know, she says she gets dressed up before she starts writing because she wants to treat creativity with great respect.
I think everybody has to find what works for them, and that's part of, you know, the important message of your talk today is just doing just that. If it's dressing up, if it's dressing down, if it's taking the run first, if it's spending some time doing mindfulness or meditation work, you know, it's going to be different for all of us, and it's important for us to get to know ourselves well enough to know what works. Yeah.
Amen. Well said.
You mentioned quite a bit about design thinking, and you know, I'm also passionate about design thinking as well, because I had one of those breakthrough moments when I attended my first design thinking workshop and just thought, this is it. This is where I have to be. So for those who are listening who aren't extremely knowledgeable about design thinking, are there a few resources you might recommend to get a better understanding or to kind of join in? Certainly we could direct people to the IDEO site and some of the work that Stanford has done.
Yeah, there are a couple resources I would recommend. The first is the original IDEO shopping cart video, which was made by Nightline about 22 years ago, where IDEO codified design thinking. They didn't invent it, but they codified it and made it a thing. And what you'll see in that wonderful 7-minute video is how diverse groups get together to solve a problem called how to create a new shopping cart. But going back to listening, I think a great resource is, as you go through life, to use the question, what's missing when you come into situations, and to really look at what people care about that's not happening with empathy. Empathy is a great resource for design thinking, because all of us in our own lives have a lot of empathy for the situations that we're in and the places that we go and the businesses and institutions that we participate in. And if you bring empathy to those situations, you will begin to think like a design thinker. And then, as you said, IDEO has great resources on their site. IBM has a fantastic, it's called Enterprise Design Thinking, a fantastic certification program. And those would probably be my top resources.
And I actually have the shopping cart video. I've used that with my classes and with some of my clients. So I can, for our listeners, we'll be able to get the link and put that out on the acceleratingwin.org website. Thank you for bringing that up.
I mean, there's one more, it's a great book. Jerry Hirschberg was the founder of Nissan Design. When Nissan wanted to open a design center in the US, they hired Jerry, who had been, I think, at Ford. And he built the Z, and he created one of the first SUVs called the Xterra. And he wrote a beautiful book with his wife, Linda, called The Creative Priority. And it's about how to build a business around creativity and treating ideas with great respect. They're seedlings, they need to be nurtured. And there's so much wisdom in that book. Jerry's one of my mentors. And that is a profound book, The Creative Priority by Jerry Hirschberg.
We're going to have to put a resource list together to go along
Sure.
with the talk today. That sounds fantastic. Now, you had talked quite a bit about some of the work that you've done now with colleges, and especially with the Direct Effect Innovation Challenge. What excites you the most among upcoming generational cohorts?
Seeing them get empowered, I think that we've had too big a gap between school and work. And you guys obviously have understood that for many years, and you have worked with all of your programs around internships and live clients, et cetera, to bring school and work closer together. But what I've seen, unfortunately, is too many people in my own family, the daughter of my friends, best friend, graduated from a very, expensive, great school and with a degree in design, but had no clue what the profession had to offer. Didn't understand where to go, what to do. And I thought that was sort of unfortunate. So I think bringing the next cohort together with business and the community is powerful. As you know, Doreen, we did a project, another hackathon for Cincinnati Bell, and people can see this case study on direct effect innovation our website. The student team came up with an idea to do a QR code, and half of the 10,000 piece mailing used the QR code and half didn't. And the half that did got a 77% return, 77% response rate. The Cincinnati Bell folks were blown away. And they were thrilled because they were working with young people in their 20s and their teens to come up with ideas for that demographic. So look, I think what's exciting to me is helping people like Jerick Howard, whose brand you saw that he created when he was in high school, realize that I don't care what age you are, your ideas are meaningful and important. And we need to create forums like Direct Effect where we can have students and business and faculty working together, because that's where all the power is going to happen.
Well, you know, on that note, let's bring Sandy into the discussion, because
Please.
she, as I am, you know, is a big advocate of students doing hands-on projects, experiential learning, cooperative education opportunities. And so we've been able to, you know, get student teams involved in a number of different initiatives. And you mentioned earlier, Julie, talking about, you know, what becomes of this? Where does this all lead? And, you know, we've had students who have gone on to bring consulting clients on based on some of the projects that they've worked on. We've had students that have gotten hired to work on either short-term or long-term project teams, or hired for full-time positions. So there are just so many opportunities out there. And as you mentioned, it's important for us to be open to them and be willing to pursue the opportunities that really resonate with us.
Mm-hmm. You know, I'd be curious, Sandy, what you think about this. I think too many people are passive and wait in their careers to get hired. When, if you have a passion for something, being able to go somewhere and say, hey, I've got some ideas for you. I'd like to help you. You know, are you looking for interns? Like, we don't have to wait for those opportunities. We can go out and create them. And everybody I know in the business world looks at, you know, the next generation, you know, the college age graduation, college age cohort, and says, wow, they energize me. So Sandy, do you think there's room for students to go out and into the community and offer things to businesses? I'm curious.
Oh, I completely agree. We actually had our class discussion this morning was on purpose and passion. And how do we take that purpose and passion and take it into an organization? And that's why we encourage our students so much to take ownership and create their own marketability. They are a unique individual, and so they need to market that. They need to market who they are. And one of the things I see, and it was a question I wanted to ask you, you talked about fear, you talked about networking. I think one of the obstacles of students going out and taking that initial step is overcoming this fear of going outside their comfort zone. They're comfortable in the classroom, they're comfortable at home, they're friends, but there's a fear associated with going outside that educational realm to the quote business world. Do you have suggestions for how students can overcome that fear?
Yeah, let's go back to the Rachel Garcia softball pitcher example. And I said she was a role model for practice. Dr. Roger Schenck, who I studied with at Northwestern, said the difference between men and women is that men step up to the plate way more often and strike out. And I think every student, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, should develop a practice and repeat it. And it could be as simple as asking their parents to introduce them to people, asking their brothers and sisters to introduce them to people, and then sending an email and saying, can I do I'd like to come in and do an informational interview. And then setting up the time, asking that person, you know, it's got to be somebody relevant to what you're interested in. My niece's new husband, who's Italian, did this with me recently. He's in the field of cybersecurity. And he called me and he said, I just want to find out what you're doing. And we had a great conversation, and he left more informed. I left more informed. I learned as much from him as he learned from me. So find a practice. It could be informational interviewing. It could be making offers. I know people who've gone into, towns and knocked on the doors of companies and said, I think I could like make this window better for you. Like I could design this window. Find a place, it could be with a church or a synagogue or a nonprofit, where you can go out and work with people. Just volunteer to do that. That could be a practice. I've learned so much in the volunteer work that I've done, but do it 100 times. When I was in graduate school and art school, I had a teacher, Morgan O'Hara, who gave us an assignment. She said, make 100 of something. I made 100 feathers. I made 100 like paper mache feathers. If you do it over and over again, I'll tell you something that I do. Often when I meet people, if I'm interested in connecting with them, I'll just send them a LinkedIn right away. Or I'll say to them, I'd love to schedule some time. I'd love to, have a conversation with you. I might have some ideas for you. And I just like leave the door open. So you have got, and you know what? If you feel uncomfortable, you got to get over it. You got to start talking, practicing. A lot of people take improv classes to get over their fear of speaking out loud, but you've got to make requests and you've got to make offers and you got to practice it and you got to do it over and over and over again.
Thank you. That's excellent advice for our students. That's excellent advice for everyone, not just students, but even professionals. We have to create our own opportunities.
Sandra, I will, and I know Doreen understands sales very well, and Patrick does too. You know what people say to me, oh my God, they haven't returned my call. I've called them so many times. And I say, just when you feel like you're being the biggest pest, that's when they're gonna respond. It often takes 5 times to connect with somebody. And people just stop. They stop at the third. They go, I don't want to be a pest. I'm like, I want to be a pest because I want to get through. Chutzpah, you just find a way to enjoy it. Make it a game. Give yourself points.
Yeah, gamifying, right? That's definitely one way to move forward and encourage ourselves to do those things that we may otherwise be challenged to do. That's a great suggestion. Well, we are winding down, moving towards the end of our time together today. Julie, any closing thoughts, any last words of wisdom that you'd like us to share?
Go for it. I wish somebody had kicked me in the butt when I was in my 20s and said, don't hold back, dream as big as you possibly can now. And look, the world is in a world of hurt. We need everybody to jump in and make it better. We need everybody to vote. Voting is absolutely critical. Using your vote, your voice to vote, and voting with your voice, whether it's at the polls or in the, at the election booth, or in classes, or with your friends, or you have to learn to use your voice to advocate for the things you believe in. And I would just say, Doreen, that if I were somebody listening right now, I would stay very connected to Point Park University because the level of innovation in your community is outstanding. And I plan to do a lot more work with you because of it. Find the people you connect with that you resonate with. Once I met Doreen and Steve, I'm like, you're not getting rid of me. So, find those people and stick with them. You might not know what you're going to do together, but keep the relationships alive and you'll be surprised at the almost magical things that can come out. And I wish everybody a lot of luck, and please vote and make requests and make offers and don't hold back and find your passion and just have fun with it. Life is here to be shared.
Well, we actually, if you have a moment, we did have a few other questions that came in
Sure.
kind of last minute. I think people are getting very inspired by what you're talking about.
Hey.
And the question that Sandy brought up. So a follow-up to that, what advice do you have for handling rejection and maintaining self-confidence?
It's a numbers game. I did not get married until I was 33. I said to my father, I want to get married, but I haven't met anyone I want to marry. He said, honey, marriage at best is a compromise and at worst is a nightmare. I'll never forget that. But he was encouraging me to stay in the game. Look, it's a game, seriously. And I've been rejected many times. It happens to all of us. And you just pick yourself back up. It's called resilience, okay? And you develop it in here. It's not external. Your value as a human being has nothing to do with your job, your income, your title. It has to do with your innate worth as a human being. So embrace rejection. In fact, I've got a friend named Sean Nason who's writing a book called Kiss the Dragon right now. And his idea is that if you can really fall in love with the worst things that happen to you, you'll be better off. Like, use them to fly. How's that? Kiss the dragon.
That's something that will definitely be memorable as our listeners are thinking about dealing with fear and uncertainty. Kiss the dragon. All right.
Kiss the dragon. Thanks
so much, Julie. I'd like to turn it back over to Sandy to talk a little bit about what we have coming next.
So thank you, Julie. It was great information you shared with us, very enjoyable. And next week, actually, on Wednesday, October 7th, we're going to continue this conversation with Stacey Etherson, who is the founder of HR Solution for Small Businesses. And she's going to engage in a conversation with us about coaching. So you want to talk about creating opportunities. Finding a coach, being a coach is definitely a way to create an opportunity and explore. So we're going to continue the conversation next week with Stacey Etherson on a conversation about coaching. So again, I want to thank you, Julie. I want to thank everyone who joined us today. Doreen and I are just thrilled to be hosting this event. And we thank our speakers. We thank our listeners. We especially thank those behind the scenes that are helping this be a reality. And we thank the School of Business at Point Park University for enabling us to make this vision and dream a reality. You can contact Doreen and I. Our emails are on the slide. If you go to our website, acceleratingwin.org, you can see the list for the full fall of our speakers and presentations. You can register for all the speaker events. And Doreen and I are very happy to answer any inquiries you have about WIN Wednesdays, the School of Business, our programs at the School of Business. We welcome any communication at all. And one final note, we will be providing further information in October. We're going to start accepting RFPs for the spring semester. So if you have a topic you'd like to share with us or know someone who you think would really be an addition to WIN Wednesdays, those RFPs are going to be taken in November, and we'll have more information on that also. So again, thank you everyone for joining us and making this possible, and we will see you next Wednesday.
Thank you, Doreen and Sandy. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.